On a foggy evening in the small town of Middleton, two friends, Sam and Lucas, both 13 years old, decided to explore the old, abandoned hospital on the edge of town. The hospital had been closed for decades and had a dark reputation. Stories of strange noises, ghostly apparitions, and eerie occurrences had circulated among the townspeople for years. Despite this, the boys were eager for adventure and didn't believe in ghosts. "I bet there's nothing in there," Sam said, trying to sound brave as they approached the crumbling building. The hospital loomed large in front of them, its once white walls now covered in graffiti and grime. The windows were shattered, and the roof had partially caved in. Lucas nodded, though his heart was racing. "Yeah, it's probably just rats or something, but let's not stay too long, okay?" "Deal," Sam replied. "Just a quick look around, and then we can tell everyone we went inside." With flashlights in hand, they carefully stepped over the rusty chain-link fence that surrounded the hospital. The gate creaked loudly as they pushed it open, sending a shiver down their spines. The front door was missing, leaving a dark, gaping entrance that seemed to swallow the light. As they stepped inside, the smell of mildew and decay hit them immediately. The boys hesitated for a moment, but then Sam took a deep breath and pushed forward. The entrance hall was filled with debris, broken tiles, old hospital equipment, and scattered papers. The walls were peeling, and the air was cold, much colder than it had been outside. "Creepy," Lucas muttered, shining his flashlight around. "Why did we think this was a good idea again?" "Because it's cool," Sam replied, though his voice wavered slightly. "Come on, let's check out the rooms down this hall." They moved cautiously down a dark corridor, their footsteps echoing eerily. The only sound was the occasional drip of water and the crunch of broken glass underfoot. They passed several rooms, each one filled with rusted hospital beds and ancient medical equipment. "Look," Lucas whispered, pointing to a door at the end of the hall. "That one's open." The door led to what appeared to be an old operating room. The large overhead light was covered in dust, and a rusty gurney sat in the center of the room, surrounded by broken surgical tools. As they stepped inside, a sudden chill ran through the room. "Did you feel that?" Sam asked, his breath visible in the cold air. "Yeah," Lucas replied, looking around nervously. "Maybe we should go back." But before they could turn around, they heard a soft, distant sound, a child's laugh. It was faint but unmistakable, echoing through the empty halls. "Did you hear that?" Lucas whispered, his eyes wide. Sam nodded, trying to stay calm. "It's probably just the wind, or an animal." But deep down, both boys knew that wasn't true. The laugh had sounded human, and it sent a chill down their spines. They decided to keep moving, exploring a few more rooms, but the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Every so often, they would hear faint whispers, like voices coming from down the hall, but whenever they looked, there was no one there. "This is getting weird," Lucas said, his voice shaky. "Maybe we should head back." "Just a little longer," Sam insisted, though he was starting to feel uneasy too. "Let's check out the top floor. I heard that's where the weird stuff happens." Reluctantly, Lucas agreed, and they made their way to the staircase. As they climbed, the air grew colder still, and the whispers seemed to grow louder, more distinct. They could almost make out words now, though they were still too faint to understand. At the top of the stairs, they found themselves in another long hallway, this one lined with more rooms. As they moved forward, they saw a faint light coming from one of the rooms. "Is someone else here?" Lucas asked nervously. "Maybe," Sam said. "Let's check it out." They slowly approached the room, their flashlights pointed ahead. As they reached the doorway, they saw it, a figure standing in the middle of the room, bathed in an eerie bluish light. It was a young girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing a white hospital gown. Her hair was long and matted, and she was staring at the wall, her back to them. "Hello?" Sam called out, his voice trembling. The girl didn't move or respond. She just stood there, perfectly still. The boys looked at each other, unsure of what to do. Then, slowly, the girl turned her head to look at them. Her face was pale and gaunt, her eyes dark and hollow. Lucas gasped, and Sam took a step back. We should go," Sam whispered, suddenly feeling a surge of fear. But before they could turn around, the girl let out a soft, haunting giggle. The sound sent a wave of terror through them, freezing them in place. Then, she began to move towards them, slowly at first, then faster. "Run!" Lucas shouted, grabbing Sam's arm. They bolted down the hallway, their footsteps echoing loudly. As they ran, the whispers grew louder, almost deafening, and the temperature dropped even further. They could feel a presence behind them, getting closer with each passing second. They reached the staircase and practically flew down the steps, nearly tripping over each other in their haste. The front hall was just ahead, but as they neared it, the heavy metal door that led outside suddenly slammed shut with a loud bang. "No, no, no!" Sam yelled, pulling at the door, but it wouldn't budge. "We're trapped!" Lucas cried, looking around frantically. The whispers were all around them now, and the air was so cold it hurt to breathe. They could hear footsteps approaching from the hallway behind them, slow and deliberate. "Over here!" Sam shouted, pointing to a small window near the ceiling. "We can climb out!" They scrambled over a pile of debris and managed to pry the window open. Lucas climbed out first, pulling himself up and through the small opening. Sam followed, but as he was halfway out, he felt something grab his ankle. He looked back and saw the girl, her eyes wide and empty, reaching out to him. "Help!" Sam screamed, kicking frantically. Lucas grabbed his arms and pulled with all his strength. With one final tug, he managed to yank Sam through the window, and they both tumbled onto the ground outside. Part 5. Aftermath. They didn't stop running until they were far from the hospital, their lungs burning and their hearts pounding. When they finally stopped, they collapsed onto the grass, gasping for air. What was that?" Lucas panted, still shaking with fear. "I don't know," Sam replied, his voice trembling. "But it wasn't human." They sat there in silence for a few minutes, too scared to move or speak. Finally, they got up and made their way back to town, vowing never to go near the hospital again. The next day, they tried to tell their friends what had happened, but no one believed them. Everyone thought it was just a story, a prank to scare the younger kids. But Sam and Lucas knew what they had seen, and they knew they would never forget it. Years later, when they were older, they would sometimes talk about that night, trying to make sense of what they had experienced. But no matter how much time passed, they could never shake the feeling that something was still out there, waiting in the darkness of the old hospital, watching and waiting for its next visitors.